morning, everyone. I came in yesterday afternoon and looked around the room and saw all these beautiful paintings. And the first thing that struck me was I was a little alarmed because I didn't know who this person was who had signed them all. I knew we were doing a memorial service for Harriet. I didn't know who Riva was. So some of you, I understand, know her as Riva. I've been instructed to address her as Harriet, and so I will. But this is the same person, a person whom we remember today and whose life we honor today. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me. Your laugh once lifted me. Your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched.
It is hard to sing of oneness when our world is not complete, when the ones who brought us wholeness now are gone. Yet the fullness of their life is part of what we have become, and their spirit in our memory lives on. Hamakom yenachem etchem, Hamakom yenachem etchem, Hamakom yenachem etchem, betoch sha'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. It is hard to sing of oneness when our world is not complete, when we feel as though we walk the path alone. Now with memory to guide us, give us strength to find our way, grant us courage to remember and to grow. Hamakom yenachem etchem, Hamakom yenachem etchem, Hamakom yenachem etchem, betoch avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim.
And the child asked, "Tell me of life." And the sage answered, "Life, my child, is a mystery. We do not ask to be born, nor do we even understand the meaning of birth, of creation. We grow and we experience life's pleasures and pains. We love, and slowly, oh so slowly, we come to realize that we have become, that we are. At that moment, we humble ourselves before the mystery of life and quietly say, though I knew not, I have been granted the most precious gift of all, the gift of life." And the child asked, "Tell me of death." And the sage answered, "Death, my child, is a mystery. It is the inevitable return of the gift of life, the gift which came free to us. We live as the trustee of that mysterious being, of that unexplainable becoming. Yes, you and I are but the trustees of life. We nurture it. We delight in it. We give of it to others. And at the appointed time, we sadly, yet with pride, return it from whence it came. The beauty, my child, is that what we are, what we have become, remains long after the gift has been returned. It remains as a precious keepsake with our loved ones who live on."
Esa enai el harim, me'ayin yavo ezri, Esainai el harim me'ayin me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Osei Shamayim va'aretz Ezri me'im Adonai Osei Shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from whence my help will come. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from whence my help will come. My help will come from Adonai, maker of heaven and of the earth. My help will come from Adonai, maker of heaven and of the earth.
God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going out and your coming in, now and forever. My teacher, Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, about whom I've spoken many, many times, wrote this little poem in the beginning of an extraordinary book called Honey from the Rock, which tries to explain the sacred connection between each of us. I think it is a beautiful way to understand what Harriet's life was and is, because it speaks about creating a picture, this one not in paint, but with pieces of a puzzle. Each lifetime is the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. For some, there are more pieces. For others, the puzzle is more difficult to assemble. Some seem to be born with a nearly completed puzzle. And so it goes. Souls going this way and that, trying to assemble the myriad parts. But know this, no one has within themselves all the pieces to their puzzle. Like before the days when they used to seal jigsaw puzzles in cellophane, ensuring that all the pieces were there. Everyone carries with them at least one and probably many pieces to someone else's puzzle. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't. And when you present your piece, which is worthless to you, to another, whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not, you are a messenger from the Most High. Roberta.
Okay. I'm going to try to get through this. I just wanted to share a few words about my mom. Can you hear me okay?
You speak a little louder, yes.
I am a soft talker. Is that better? Okay. If I had to describe my mom in one word, I would use determined. She did not hesitate when making a decision and could very rarely be swayed once she did. She always knew what she wanted and would pursue it. This tenacity allowed her to pursue becoming a nurse practitioner while raising 3 kids and working, building the house of her dreams in Washington State, and focusing on her painting once she retired, even with decreased feeling in her hands and reduced vision. My mom grew up the older of 2 sisters in Brighton Beach, playing in the ocean, eating cherry cheese knishes, and going to Coney Island. When my mom met my dad at a skating rink, they were engaged within a few weeks, and after they got married, they moved out to the country, which was New Jersey, and started their family. My mom left behind a legacy in many arenas. She became a nurse practitioner when the field was still young and when only 2 states had prescriptive privileges. She advocated for all other states to adopt this practice. She won numerous awards for her excellent direct patient care, and when she spoke of her work as a nurse, one of her proudest moments was setting up geriatric clinics in low-income areas in Seattle. Even when she retired, she continued to share her medical understanding by offering talks to local groups and volunteering to take people to their doctor's appointments and sit with those on hospice. She instilled in us a love for travel and other cultures, taking us on many trips across the U.S. and abroad. We have many wonderful memories of these adventures and enjoying time together, whether exploring the ancient ruins of Greece or being mortified together as the only suitcase to break open in the Paris airport was the one with the toilet paper that she had brought from home for the trip. And this poor French man, do you remember him in the airport? He was like, "Madame, we do have toilet paper here." Yeah, you know. Her love of being creative and crafting will also be carried on through the generations. She enjoyed cooking and baking and loved nothing more than cooking for and with her grandchildren. My kids always loved going to eat at Grandma's house, especially the little challahs she would make. My mom was a skilled sewer and made many of our clothes and the clothes for our dolls growing up, and taught us how to sew for both practical and decorative purposes. We played with clay and other art mediums and spent many a Sunday morning with newspaper spread out on the family room floor to follow the weekly painting lesson on TV. She loved crafting with the grandkids as well, and I can still remember after we had Ryan, she showed up at our door with bags of cereal boxes and containers to build a city with Eli and Liam for their bears. While on hospice, I was grateful for the time we got to talk. While her mind was clear, and she had little pain, she said her greatest pride were her children and her grandchildren. She will be missed, but always remembered as we make her recipes, explore new cultures and places, continue to pursue artistic endeavors, and most importantly, remembering to take the time to care for those around us.
I gave this image of my teacher's puzzle poem. And I do believe that each of us, the picture that is our life, is made up of pieces that have come to us from so many different people and so many different experiences. As we talk about Harriet's life, we have an audiovisual aid by looking around the room. And it's not simply the paintings, but you can see if you look, and I believe Sherry staged these in this way, she explored different genres of painting. And so you're going to see paintings that are still lifes, and paintings that are of certain areas of the country, and paintings of things that I assume she never saw except in her mind. And all of these together form Harriet/Riva. But so do each of you. And I'd ask all of you who knew her to think now about the composite picture that was her life. Think of all the pieces that fit together to create this work of art. Some are beautiful, some are dark. It's the nature of a painting. You can't paint only with light. So we look back now at the pieces that came together to form her life. Harriet's parents, Samuel and Etta, were both born in Brooklyn. Samuel was a furrier. Etta was an administrative assistant in the personnel office of Coney Island Hospital. Together they brought two daughters into this world, Harriet and Debbie. Debbie remembers that as a child, her sister had a lot of friends and she was the leader. She was the one who would decide what the group was going to do, and the group did it. And she watched out for you as her little sister, at the same time never ceasing to remind you that she was your big sister. As a teenager, she went to work and started to work for a dental hygienist, which began her career path toward nursing, which was so important to her. Even though she got married young and moved to the country, you said the phone always connected you, and you visit her at her home in Union. That was the country, by the way, Union. And you said that over the last few years you became even closer, that you shared experiences, life experiences, all the different pieces of your puzzles, and especially stories about your children. You said that in these years you became best friends. And I asked you what your most precious memory of your sister was. And you said that it was one day in Union when you were making Hamantaschen together, and you were, and I wrote this down, washing it down with rum and Coke. And you said you remember having had the strangest looking Hamantaschen ever, and your sister, as probably a tribute to the rum and Coke, had no memory of it whatsoever. Sherry, I asked you your earliest memory of your mother, and you said it was the day that you moved from Union to Brookside Mendham. Part of it you remembered being in the moving van, sort of sitting between your parents because there was no seat for you, and moving into a huge new house. And it was such a major part of your life when you were in middle school and your mother went back to work to become a nurse practitioner. And number one thing that happened was that you learned to cook. Very quickly you had to learn to cook. But you also remember the times that you and your family traveled together, traveling through Europe. And then when you were in college, just you and your mom went to Russia. And you had this wonderful story about buying a watermelon, a small watermelon, excuse me, at a time when Russia did not offer much in the way of fresh fruits and vegetables. You bought it, but you did not think of were utensils. And so your mother used her nursing shears, her nursing scissors to cut open the watermelon, which you remember as being really delicious. You also acknowledged that you were both very stubborn people, in many ways cut from that same piece of cloth. And reflecting back, you realize that seeing the stubbornness in your mother helped you to mellow a little bit, to be able to, I said a little bit, to be able to see that there is a value in being able to back down and even to acknowledge that you were wrong on something. It does make life a lot, you're beautiful. Every one of you talked about how over the past years since the grandchildren started coming into the world, that this was just such a joy. When your kids were born, she loved every minute of the time she spent with them. And each of your children spoke so beautifully about their grandmother. We'll talk about that. Sherry, I asked the most important thing your mother taught you. And you said it was to love cooking. Not just for the cooking itself, but to see that in the cooking was nurturing. Nurturing of the family, of the friends that you loved. How important that was to you. And you carry that on, nurturing family and friends, and, to be honest, a great portion of the entire Temple Rodeph Torah community, because when people hear that the chocolates are coming, our attendance at any event doubles. No, it's not a joke. Roberta, you spoke so beautifully of your mother. Thank you. You said that your earliest memory was going to a nearby Orthodox temple with her when you were little and baking challah for the whole congregation there. You talked about family events and having people over and how willing she was to help you with your school projects. You remembered going to her school with her and helping her at home, helping her with cooking, with sewing. At the same time, she encouraged you and your sister toward your own independence. She encouraged you to travel, to get out in the world. And as you grew up, as your family grew, she wanted so much to be involved with your family. And you and she, as well as the children, still played games together. Games were the things we played before phones were invented. And when you and Sherry had children, as soon as she could, she moved back from Seattle. That's the one thing that could bring her back here, because family events and family were so important to her. And I asked you to think about the most important things you learned from her. And you said two. First was compassion. The ultimate example of compassion was how she related to the driver of the car who was driving when your sister Lori died. Now, she refused to sue and said that was not something he needed. And also her sense of humor, especially sense of humor at difficult times, in the healing power of laughter, something which she took with her in her work and in her family and in her own life through difficult times. Harriet's daughter, Lori, Zichrona Livracha, died in a tragic accident when she was just 22 years old. But Harriet made sure that scholarships were established in her memory, both in her high school and at the Cornell School of Hotel Management, where she had studied. The three of you, three daughters, were each very different people. And you saw and you understood how your mother recognized each of you for who you were and supported each of you in the path that you chose in your life. Ron, when I asked you about your mother-in-law, you said that you met Harriet at a hotel in Freehold, that you had schlepped out for an interview with AT&T. You did not know that you were going for a secondary interview with your future mother-in-law, but that she was incredibly welcoming to you. She came all the way down from Morris County to meet you, to see you. And over all the years, you said the only real conflict you ever had with her was Scrabble, because she loved it and you did not. But you did also recognize that you changed a lot of light bulbs for her over the years. Whether that was beyond her capability or she just liked you having it do it, I could not say. And you remembered how she loved being with all of you, especially when the kids came home from school. And you remembered what you considered her trademark, which were cut-up pineapple slices with maraschino cherries nailed down to each one with a toothpick. And I'm not sure whether it was grudgingly or not, but you acknowledged that it was actually a really delicious combination. And as we all know, so good for you. Lonnie, you talked about having a good relationship with your mother-in-law and how much you enjoyed her company. When you visited Seattle one time after what you kindly described as a very difficult flight, she created motion sickness bands for you out of sweatbands and overcoat buttons, and which long after you saw the commercial ones, you kept wearing. I think you said about 5 years you wore those bands on every flight until I guess they disintegrated and you finally broke down and bought a pair. But I love the idea of those bands going with you on your flights. And you also talked about how much you loved her relationship to your kids. How she would get down to their level. That she would come in, she would get on the floor, she would get on a chair, wherever it was. And you said in these words, she enjoyed them at each stage of their lives. And that was one of the things that you appreciated most about her. Harriet has 5 grandchildren, at this moment scattered over various parts of the world. 2 are here, 2 are watching on live stream, and one is going to watch the recording afterwards because she's at the airport or on a plane coming back from Australia and could not get here. And that one, that's Brenda. So Brenda, when you watch this, I thank you for spending the time yesterday, all of you together and speaking with me. When I asked you what you remembered about your grandmother, you said, first of all, that you don't think you ever beat her at Scrabble. And you really wanted to. Everybody wanted to. There may have been 2 people in the world who did at some point, her daughters. Not sure, but okay. You talked about how she tried to teach you to knit, and that one didn't work. But she also gave you the recipe for her challah, which not only did it work, but it continues to work. And you talked about the pride that you feel when you tell people, this is my grandma's challah recipe. She loved all the holidays, all of them. And one grandchild after another spoke about the way she approached Halloween and Valentine's Day. More to come about that. You talked about how there were always cards from her, regular cards and e-cards, and you quoted BlueMountain.com as one of her favorite websites. They were for holidays, and sometimes they were just thinking of you cards. I asked you your best memory of your grandmother, and you said, weekend with Grandma, spending time at her place when you were young, playing dress up, how she had an amazing assortment of dresses and skirts and costumes for you. And you insisted on adding later your other memory about going to the movies with her. The best part was not even the movies, it was that, and this is really telling, on the way to the movies you would always stop for candy at the dollar store. Much better value. And that was, the candy was the best part. I think the movie you could have taken or left, but that candy was it. Greg, you remembered a lot of going over to her place. And you remembered going to the dollar store. But you said when you went there it was to find toys and to find other stuff for you to play with. You remembered making pretzels and making the mini challahs with her. And you had an extraordinary memory of the last time you were together, when you were in high school, and you played Scrabble, and she won, and just spent time together. It was really, really nice. Liam, you were the first one that expanded the games out to include categories when we were talking, and how you remembered playing all kinds of games with her. And you remembered the special place she had in her office where everyone got measured against the wall. Over a decade of you and your siblings and your cousins growing, and each step being marked off on the wall. You remembered playing inside and playing outside, and how whenever you played Frisbee, the Frisbee would get stuck on the roof. And how everything she offered you to drink came from a V8 bottle. Didn't have to be V8, but that was the real recycling. Whatever you wanted, water, whatever it might have been, it was in a V8 bottle. And how at least a week in advance of every holiday, you got a box from her. For Halloween, you got a Boo box. And a box for Valentine's Day. She never forgot. Over 20 years, she never forgot. And you said you always looked forward so much to going to her house. Eli, you said that you did your best just to get to see her. And you remembered weekends together and playing dress up and meeting her house, at her house, and everyone together. You also were a big fan of categories with her, because when you played with her, she pulled out things that you never even heard of. She was amazing at that. And you said it was always a fun time with her. Ryan, you also remembered and loved the growth chart, because you saw as you did it that you were catching up. to your brothers and your cousins, and you did acknowledge trying to stand on things to make yourself a little higher on the wall. And you said that your grandma would buy toys at garage sales for you. She bought tracks for your cars and a whole train set she set up for you. She tried to think of what you would love to do. And this March, despite everything she was going through, she was absolutely determined to be at your bar mitzvah, and she was. And right after that, things got incredibly difficult, but I do not doubt for a moment that she made sure, whatever it took, that she would be there for your celebration. Brenda and Craig and Liam and Eli and Ryan, I said this to you at the end of the conversation yesterday, and I really hope that you will think about this. I've spoken about a lot of people's grandparents at funerals. Been a lot of years. But I don't know if you recognized what your grandmother did that I hear so seldom. And I want you to remember how extraordinarily special this is. A lot of people say they love going to spend time with their grandparents. But each one of you talked about how your grandma went out of her way to figure out what you wanted to do, what you would love to do, what would be fun for you. When you said that she got on their level, it wasn't just physically getting on the floor. It's that whether it was the dollar store or a garage sale or what it might be, she looked, what could I get that will be fun for them? And I hope you remember that. I hope you remember it one day to do for your grandchildren. But I hope you remember the blessing that she gave you of making sure you knew not just that she loved you, but she loved doing things with you. That is a beautiful, beautiful blessing. You heard from Roberta about Harriet's work and work ethic. I know it's only recently here in New Jersey that nurse practitioners have been able to write prescriptions. They used to have to go into the doctor, the quotes, real doctor, to get that done. When she worked to get that law passed in New Jersey and didn't succeed, she said, where is the law? And it was in Seattle, and she moved there so she could work and help people. And then when family brought her back, she said, then I'm not going to stop until this becomes law here. And it is now law here that nurse practitioners can write prescriptions. She was honored for her work. She was respected for her work, even being called as expert witness on many occasions. And when she retired at age 65, she didn't stop working. She kept helping because it's who she was. And when she stopped working, she really started, from many years ago, but started painting. And created over 150 works, including when it was difficult for her to see. She painted. She would paint from photographs. And her very last work was commissioned by her grandson, Craig, to paint a copy of a photograph that he had taken. That was the very last work she did this past March. You both talked about your mother's stubbornness. But Roberta, you also acknowledged that it may have been her stubbornness that helped her through her chronic illnesses that lasted over decades. And it may have been that impossible task of not letting go that kept her fighting and kept her alive and had her overcome every one of those illnesses and every one of those dark times until the very, very end of her life. I'm sure there are times that that trait made things difficult, but it may also have given you your mother for all these years. This is the picture of Harriet's life. All those pieces fitted together now so we can see a complete and whole picture. What are the pieces of her life? That she was smart and educated, that she was stubborn and determined, that she was creative, an artist in so many ways and so many media, that she was colorful and a collector, that she was positive and did not complain even when she could have had many reasons to complain, that she was caring. And within that puzzle stand out her pride for her work and her absolute, unquestioning, infinite pride for her family, for her children, for her grandchildren, for all those she loved. Zichronah livracha. When we look at this beautiful painting that she created in her life, may her memory be a blessing.
בידו הפקיד רוחי, והד אישם והירה, ועם רוחי גווייתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, ועם רוחי גווייתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Safely in your hand. בידו הפקיד רוחי, ואת אישם והירה, ועם רוחי גווייתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, ועם רוחי גווייתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא.
Eternal God, Master of mercy, give me the gift of remembering. May my memories of the dead be tender and true, undiminished by time. Let me recall them and love them as they were. Shelter me with the gift of tears. Let me express my sense of loss, my sorrow, my pain, as well as my love and words unspoken. Bless me with the gift of prayer. May I face you with an open heart, with trusting faith, unembarrassed and unashamed. Strengthen me with the gift of hope. May I always believe in the beauty of life, the power of goodness, the right to joy. May I surrender my being and the soul of the dead to your all-knowing compassion. You're good. Following the conclusion of this service, you are all invited to stay for a lunch and to share your own memories and consolation with the family. Harriet's family has asked, under her supervision, that if you would like to make a contribution in her memory, that you consider the Samaritan Hospice of New Jersey, which was so very, very kind and loving to her. And something which I don't ever remember saying in a funeral before, the family has another request of each of you. And that is that when you leave here today, you please take one of the paintings around the room. Harriet never wanted to sell them. Wasn't what she wanted. The family has chosen ones that they wanted. Don't worry. Every painting here is for one of you. Look around, find one. I know there's that feeling of, oh, I couldn't. They actually want you to. That's why they're here. So please look around and see if you can take a little piece of Harriet to fill in the picture that is your life. If you are able, please rise.
El Malachamim shochen b'mromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im kedoshim utorim kizohar harakim mazhirim lenishmat hinariva bat Shmuel vita שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן שהיא מנוחתה ענה בעל החמים אז תראה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים בצחו החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
O God in heaven, filled with compassion for those you bring into this world, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Harriet Reaver Berliner, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, in the company of those who shine as bright as heaven. Bring her soul into the bond of eternal life. You are her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We conclude the service with the words of Kaddish on the card that each of you received. If I could ask a favor, if you wouldn't mind just picking those up off the floor, I'd be very grateful. Thank you. At the conclusion of the service, I'm going to ask the immediate family to walk with us and to stand right here. All the rest of you, I will ask after this prayer that you come and stand in this aisle, facing each other, forming two lines, so the mourners can walk between you and receive your consolation. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divera chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam u'la'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha brichu ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May there be a great peace from heaven and life for us and all Israel. May you, who makes peace in the heavens, make peace for us, for all Israel, and for all the world. And let us say, Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael